Thank you. Madam President, you laid out quite a challenge for us. I believe a lot of what I've done at MIT Lincoln Laboratory has been over the past 15 years to try to understand where we can make headway in the cybersecurity game. And that involves trying to focus and be able to pick out parts of the problem that we can focus on more effectively. Oh, like this? Is this better? All right. So I'd like to try to help us think a little bit about how to understand and describe the cyber challenges so that we can make headway against them. So of course, the challenge was also laid out to try to avoid the arms race. We've heard a number of excellent comments on the range of cyber threats, the actions that can be taken, and the types of effects that can be had. And so what I'd like to try to do from a technological perspective, one of the things we do try to focus on is how to best make sense of what it means to succeed from the attacker's perspective and the defender's perspective. And this helps us model and understand, and I think it's a very useful tool that we can utilize. So I'd like to be able to try to think about, if you will, a set of events that we would carry out as defenders and a set of events that the attackers would carry out against us. So let's consider that sort of set of steps. So we try to think about perhaps the attackers understanding what their objective is, describing their objectives against our target, our system, whatever we present as a target, whether it's an aircraft or a aircraft carrier or an information system that has the ability to control a message to the population. They have to understand that target. They have to be able to get into that target from a control perspective. We of course deploy these computers. We use them, our iPhones, our servers that carry our email and so forth. Somebody has deployed that. The attackers need to get in. There's a sphere of control that we try to present around them. The attackers must breach that. So let's think about what it is that they need to do to get in and try to make that difficult. And then finally, what is the objective? What are the objectives that those attackers are trying to have when they are going after a particular computer system? We've heard a number of the objectives laid out already. I think a couple of good characterizations of that. But I believe that what we can really do is think both hand in hand about what the attackers' objectives are and what our objectives are, what we're trying to do is we build and defend and maintain these systems. So let's think more critically think more critically then about what the defenders are trying to do. What are we trying to do to defend these types of systems? We're of course trying to make it hard to get into these systems. We're trying to make it hard for attackers to maintain a presence in these systems. And then we're trying to make it difficult for them to have an effect. We're also trying to make it easy for us to to do the good things that we'd like to with our information systems and with our aircraft and so forth. And so from a technological perspective, we can map to each of these 6 areas, getting in, keeping them from getting in, staying in, and identifying the attackers when they are in, trying to have an effect and trying to prevent that effect. We can map into each of these areas technological things that we do, hooks, tools, there's a very wide array. But we use models like this, simple models, to help us understand and quantify what it means to succeed and what it means to cause failure on the other side of the fence. And so I would encourage that as a model to the community to use when they're trying to consider how to write that policy or how to guide the national thought on this. Really, we need to be able to come back and describe things that we can measure and quantify. So one of the things that we like to do, and maybe it's just a very small piece of the solution and could be broadened much more easily, one of the things we'd like to try to do is consider the job that we have to carry out, the computer system that we have to carry that job out on, and try to describe the relationship between the thing that we're doing and the computer system that's carrying it out. Terms are often utilized in the community, mapping the mission. The mission maybe is a Department of Defense term, but that's the job. How did the computer system support that? This is a valuable construct for us because it allows us to describe what it means to succeed. We can't necessarily prove that the attackers could never get in, the hackers could always be thwarted. But we can try to prove, we have a hope of trying to prove that we can always do what it is we need to do with that computer system. That doesn't handle all of the cases, all of the situations that we were challenged with earlier. It handles some of them. We'd like to be able to fly airplanes without anyone disrupting the ability of that aircraft to navigate and stay in the air. So we can map out and model the reliance of flying an airplane on the set of computer systems that help us do that. And I'd like to contemplate a number of ways, because there's some real, I think, technological messages in here that can also help inform the thought process. So we can do a very manual mapping. Humans can sit down, engineers can sit down, understand the plans, describe where the computer systems are flying the airplane, where those same computer systems are interacting with business networks, describe those places where attackers could get their bad stuff in there, where hackers could get their things into that system. And then we can also, because that's a fairly static view, that's a system engineering view, that's how you thought the system was going to be built in the beginning. It's not necessarily how it's used and operated, how it's evolved over time. And so then we need real-time techniques that will be able to monitor and assess and analyze the behavioral properties of those systems to maintain that mapping between a set of tasks, a set of functions, and the computing capabilities that are carrying them out. And so that dynamic mapping is also very important. That's one of the things that we spend a lot of time trying to research and understand. But it's just a tip of the iceberg. So then I think we need to consider, so if that's one part of the message, so one part of the message is what it is that we have to try to build or attempt to create as a better set of cyber infrastructure. There's a number of things that we will build into that infrastructure to enable its resilience. There are things that we might consider good hygiene. If we were only doing the things that we knew how to do already, like intelligent use of cryptography, intelligent use of two-factor authentication, as the prior speaker mentioned, these are hygiene things that would really raise the bar for the bad guys, the hackers, and really lower the bar for us, both as individuals and as an entity, a corporation or company or Department of Defense. So there's a set of things that really need to be built in from the get-go that we already know how to do, and it takes a little more will and a little more focus and maybe a little more time and money. That's one piece. Then I think we need to consider the model by which we evolve that system, that capability. These hackers will always, of course, find new ways to gain access to systems. That's sort of the name of the game in security. And so we need a construct. There must be both sort of political and engineering and acquisition constructs to rapidly evolve those systems so as to keep up with cyber threats. And this brings me to the point where I think we need to consider both lessons learned on the commercial sector, from the commercial sector, and also from the government enterprise sector. I believe in the commercial world, there are ways to define and construct the problem, put in place that SLA, that service level agreement, so that it's crystal clear where the innovation must take place, how to evolve that capability to provide the service at a known level. I think in the system of systems space that we create when we cram all these things together inside of another company or Department of Defense, I think that's where we need to be able to innovate and have models that rapidly respond to new technology and new constructs, both technologically and from a human's perspective, from a how do you get that team at NATO to operate in a new domain or a new against a new threat much more rapidly. So I think there's a lot of room to consider that business model by which we evolve our cyber capabilities. And then finally, I guess I would like to wrap up with a point that it's very easy to throw our hands in the air and say, oh, it's impossible. We can't possibly gain a headway against the cyber challenge. And I think there are a number of things that do indeed work in our favor. There are a number of things that we can put in place that allow individuals and corporations to have a surety. Cryptography, for example, used intelligently, can provide a lot of control over the information that we produce and that we allow others to consume. That's just one example. Finally, also, when we're constructing a set of computer systems, the things that the attackers are exploiting are often, although not always, fragile vulnerabilities that are going to come and go. There are a number of things that we can do to make that domain a lot more resilient and sure, and sort of, you know, the set of computers that we put in place will remain at a certain level or certain standard of security for a longer period of time. So I think that's where I leave.
Wait just a second.
Sure.
Quick question for you. Deeply involved in the creation of global forum. Go ahead.
So Anders, the core, the previous speaker, suggested that you have to invest in cyber offense in order to be able to do a good job of cyber defense. I hear your comments differently. I hear there's a lot that can be done defensively without us being invested heavily in offensive capability.
I think we do have to have an understanding of where the vulnerabilities arise and how they will be taken advantage of. I think we could spend a lot of time and money trying to understand all of those vulnerabilities and all of those ways that vulnerabilities could be utilized. I think that there's a lot of headway to be made on the other side of the fence against some of these types of cyber attacks, where we're really building resilience into our own systems. We're making it easier for ourselves to do the job.
Is that a yes or a no? You're
I think it's
half agreeing with him and half not agreeing with him.
I think it's a difficult question. I don't think it's mandatory. I don't think it's mandatory. I think that defending our systems requires deep knowledge of our systems.
Great. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
Thanks.